Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here in Point Clear, Alabama for the annual Aerospace Alliance meeting. Incredible organization that represents aerospace and defense companies across 4 key aerospace and defense Gulf states: Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. And we're here to talk to Frank DiBello, who is the president and CEO of Space Florida, an august organization. You've been a space guy your entire career, including up in Washington, and now you live in sunny Florida. Talk to us about Space Florida and what it is and what you guys are trying to accomplish.
Very fine. Space Florida is a very unique organization created by the legislature in Florida to, number one, develop a world-leading aerospace industry, so our charter is true broad aerospace. But we also serve as the state space authority to make sure that Florida has the infrastructure and the resources to be able to build its industry, which is an industry of tomorrow. We're a for-profit public corporation for the common good, but I also have a municipal authority in that we are an independent special district that gives us a lot of tools to work with in financing infrastructure. The growth of the industry, the aerospace industry really works on a return on assets model, and that aerospace industry likes to lease assets, and this is primarily centered around the financings that we do to make infrastructure available for companies.
And I want to talk to you about that infrastructure investment you make, because anybody who has any amount of excess capacity can get leased out. So NASA, for example, which has great facilities and infrastructure, it can lease out to other folks to use, at a time of a very vibrant space economy. As you look to the future, right? I mean, you and I were talking a little bit earlier about the democratization of space. Whether it's to acquire a spacecraft, I can buy a kit and for relatively easy money build a very, very small satellite, and then I can go to a launch provider, for example, Spaceflight or SpaceX or any of a number of other choices, and get that into space and do it relatively economically. Talk to us about how that's completely changing the model, how it's changing the model for you as well, because historically these players have been very big footprints, as opposed to being so many more agile and more dynamic players.
Well, that is the thing that's most exciting about the space industry. Technologies are very broad that are involved in the industry, and they're being advanced very, very rapidly, as well as adapted into new products and services very, very rapidly. We show that in the next decade, up to 10,000 new satellites will be launched. Florida will launch a lion's share of those. But it's not just about the launch industry that excites us. It's the stuff that's at the pointy end of the rocket that really enables thousands of new applications developers, which really are the high value-added companies that grow at compound average annual growth rates of 20 and 30%. And they're going to be creating applications in all walks of life that enable countries all over the globe to raise the level of their people and use space technology for education, for new materials, for all kinds of applications that make sense.
Talk to us a little bit about the Aerospace Alliance, because normally states are trying to knock each other out, whereas this is something very, very unique, where all the states are actually in a very intimate partnership of how to help each other improve their game. You can see this across the board in almost every one of the meetings or even all the interactions for folks. Talk to us about why the Alliance is so important and what Florida gets out of it, for example, but also what Florida puts into it.
Well, the Alliance is important because we share common problems. The depth of supply chain in the region is important to the industry, as is the depth of a skilled workforce. And so when any one of our states brings a major player or a major new line of business into the region, we all share in that, in providing the workforce and in building the supply chain to support it. Florida in particular has come from an era in which its space industry was predominantly federal. NASA and national security missions run by the Air Force and NRO. We as a state, faced several times when the state was maimed by an overdependence on a large federal program that was canceled. When Space Florida was created and when I took this job, our goal was to diversify the industry. We swore we'd never let that happen again, where we were hurt from a cancellation. So we focused on diversifying the industry as well as building its supply chain. And to do that effectively, you need regional cooperation. Today, we're not just launching stuff, which was Florida's history. Today, we're building the rockets that we launch. We're building 2 next-generation spacecraft in Florida, and now we're building satellites in multiple parts of the state. But the exciting thing, again, is the supply chain and the thousands of companies that are going to work with those 10,000 satellites that will be deployed and develop applications which really do affect every walk of life.
Do you, a key part of this conference has been developing the next generation of talent. Predominantly male, predominantly white industry, how to get diversity into this industry, how to attract a whole new generation of folks to come in there, because we're looking at a massive generational shift, whether it's in the commercial aviation industry or even if it's in the defense industry and also in the space industry as well. What are the skill sets that are needed for the future from your standpoint? And what are things that state, local, and national governments can do to attract people to a vocation that has been very passion-based, but sometimes the kids who are passionate about rockets don't end up in the rocket business. And even with an Elon Musk, I'm not convinced that a whole new generation of people are automatically, it's one thing to say, hey, this is what I want to be when I grow up. A fraction of those people actually end up doing it. So what do you think the right approach is for the future to get this kind of high-quality, educated workforce for the future?
Well, I think the industry has to partner, not only individually but collectively, with its university and public college system, private college system. It's important to create an intimacy and ongoing partnership so that you're shaping the curriculum to feed the kind of talent base and feed the talent supply chain that meets industry need. That's with the engineering degrees. But as we move to new technologies for advanced manufacturing, all kinds of devices, use of composites, next generation materials, ways of putting things together, there's a whole other class of advanced manufacturing skills that don't necessarily require a college degree, but they do require an insight and interest on the part of students, and you need to catch those in grade school and high school so that they can work in pursuing skills in the trades, machine tools, use of composites. There are a whole range of these, use of 3D printers, printing devices, and we're finding new ways to make things, and the space technologies are really beginning to permeate almost everything that we do. There is a trend in the industry where we are increasingly merging technologies so that a student coming from a bio engineering degree is suddenly has multiple choices. Does he marry that bio with other forms of mechanical? We're putting sensors into devices that are aircraft skins. All of these things will be connected, all generating data in the future, whether they're satellites that are interconnected, connected to airplanes that are in the sky, connected to things on the ground or in your back pocket, in your homes. And this is enabling a large volume of data that will feed many of those applications developers that I keep referring to.
Let me ask you a last question about financing, right? I mean, you're a corporation. What are capital markets looking for in space? And is financing easy? Right now, there's an abundance of money, and I think some of the concerns are more on sort of the social media and the big tech companies. But your companies are as sophisticated as any of them are, and they could fall into new tech. Some of them, and certainly Tesla falls into that sort of more new tech than old tech. What's the challenge for getting financing from your standpoint, and what are some other opportunities you guys have that you're going to pursue to sort of expand the franchise?
Well, I think that investment is always about putting capital at risk for return on investment, and that is clearly what is motivating the industry right now. There has been a swelling of the cash reserves over the past decade, or maybe longer than that, since the fall of the dot-coms. But that capital is now looking both to new infrastructure, which enables all kinds of other growth in the peripheral value-added businesses that surround it, as well as into new technologies, which they see also being infused into next-generation products. When we can put sensors, controllable sensors, into new materials, there's no reason why we can't have programmable clothing, why we can't be 3D printing food, why we can't be doing all kinds of things. We're already seeing that with flying cars, new modes of personal transportation, And I could carry this on prosthetic arms and body parts. We can 3D print body parts in the future. So the use of these technologies as they're being advanced is really going to open up whole new markets that we don't even see now. And that's why investors are flocking to the space industry, which really is a hotbed of innovation. And as we push to do difficult things in space and push the edges of technology, we raise the levels of the people all over the world. So that's a key part of what's driving a lot of the investments in space.
And what about, and what's next for Space Florida? As you're looking at your 5, 10, 20-year investment strategy, where do you see, where do you want to be, say, in 5 to 20 years?
Well, in the next decade, we clearly want to continue to build our supply chain, but we're preparing for a whole new era of human activity in low Earth orbit. The White House, through the National Space Council, has pushed NASA to focus on the moon and beyond. But they've also, in their second policy directive, suggested that they turn over low Earth orbit activity to industry and to allow industry to provide the logistic support for governmental missions out and beyond. And that's a proper role for industry. This low Earth orbit activity are going to be companies going up into low Earth orbit to move things around, to refuel things, to repair satellites, to conduct research, to manufacture, and there are a number of manufacturing companies that we're already working with. That we have a 3D printer in space, and so we're doing things like that now. I see that as a new era of space involvement that will clearly benefit Florida. And I guess our goal, we're preparing for up to 100 launches a year out of Florida. We want to be the ground node for all of that activity that's in space and a new era of space commerce. We would like to see Florida viewed as the London of several centuries ago, as the global enabler for a future of space commerce.
Frank DiBello, CEO and President of Space Florida. Real pleasure. Great seeing you, sir, and best of luck, and look forward to visiting you in Florida instead of seeing you in Alabama next time.
Thank you. I'll look forward to it as well, and I'm up there often. Don't hesitate to call anytime I can help you.
Thank you, sir.
Very good.